Hello, good morning and welcome. And yes, we're back for another exciting business breakfast show with myself, David Bell. And as always, sitting in the hot seat, well, virtually in the hot seat next to me, my co-host and good friend, Mr. Nick Looby. Good morning, Nick. The weather looks great out your window this morning.
Beautiful, isn't it? Beautiful. So I've had to move because the weather in Essex is changeable. Middle of May, mate. Can you believe it? The middle of May already. Okay. I scanned the news this morning. Nothing good going on. Okay. So I don't know what we'll talk about in the news, but delighted to be back. It's Thursday morning, 8 a.m., which means it's the Chatbox Breakfast Business Show. And what a show we have for you today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Nick and I have been running the chat show now for, well, in excess of a year. We've done majority of it, nearly all of it, virtually, in the respect that Nick's in one location, I'm in another, and we're using the wonderful platforms of LinkedIn Live. Good morning. If you're watching us on LinkedIn, I see a number of you are on there. Facebook Live. We're going to YouTube. We're out on Twitter and also Twitch. So we're streaming to all these platforms, which is exciting. And we've got other plans to do some stuff face-to-face in studios and out on the road. But Nick and I have always had this, I wonder if we could do this in the metaverse. And lots of people are probably now sitting there going, metaverse sounds great, but what is the metaverse? Well, that's what today's show is all about. We've brought on the experts that can tell us more than we know, can share with you what the metaverse is, why it's potentially, and I'm going to use cynical language here, why it could potentially be the future, and maybe it will or maybe it won't. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it going to allow us to collaborate and work together more efficiently in business and in our personal lives? Or is it going to be just another one of those fads that's going to be a bubble that bursts? And there are our questions. I mean, that's a summary of the show. We're going to learn more, find out more, and find out if it's something we should really consider in the business world, and should we be popping our money into it? Typically, as small business owners, we know some of the big organizations are throwing millions, if not billions, into this. Now, Nick, you tend to be the one that's a little bit more cynical than I am. Bear in mind, I come from a technology background. I embrace tech, but you've already got yourself a VR headset. You're already playing and delving around. But what's your thoughts on this? Do you think this is something that we should be taking seriously? Do you think this is just, this is a bubble that's going to burst?
I think I've got a lot to learn, to be fair. I'm not quite sure what it
On the
is
fence,
yet.
Nick?
Yeah, I'm massively concerned because you know me, I'm a human-centric communication guy, right? So I like nothing better than you and I getting together face to face, having conversations, right? That's the way I roll. So I'm cynical is probably not the right word. I'm wary of an environment that takes the human out of that interaction. So I'm willing to learn, and hopefully we get some assistance from our lovely audience as well. So feel free to ask some questions, get stuck in, let us know how you're doing, and any things that we're not asking that's on the tip of your tongue, feel free to ask yourselves. Good morning, Donna. Lovely to see you tuning into the show. Great friend of the show.
Yeah, it's a regular. While we're talking about, obviously, the metaverse, let's just quickly cast our minds back, Nick. Last week or so has been a busy week on lots of different fronts. Lots of great things have been happening. But let's just talk about this very quickly. This here is a picture at the Muller Centre up in Cambridge, where Nick and I were involved last week in delivering some fantastic content all around startup ideas. So startup ideas that will form into business. That was the boot camp. Hopefully we've got some of the finalists or some of those that attended boot camp maybe watching this show. And what we actually did is we went along, we shared loads of great content throughout the day about speaking and presenting, marketing, sales, business planning, finances was delivered by Mr. James Barlow, a very knowledgeable individual when it comes to knowing your numbers. And then we did something really exciting and very different. And actually the first time that we've done it with this kind of group, we took Chatbox into a studio and we brought them up in their droves onto the sofa, and we asked them questions about their idea and their market and how they're going to take their idea forwards, and if they were successful in winning some funding, because that's what it's about. It's a bit like a dragon's den. There's a big pot of money at the end, and other really useful things like mentoring and office support and stuff like that. What would they do? It was great, wasn't it? The ideas were just phenomenal.
Really, so inspiring, right? Great ideas, really kind of enthusiastic, let's say young entrepreneurs, and throwing them into the Chatbox studio, putting them on the sofa and asking them questions. What a great way to kind of really formulate and get ready to respond to investors about your idea. What a lovely couple of people. They're ready to interview you about your entrepreneurial dreams. It was great fun, mate.
It was great fun, and the feedback was, everyone loved it because it was just very different. It was very dynamic, and also they had to think on their feet. There was nothing pre-sketched or pre-planned, and all we said is, right, this is what's going to do. We're going to grab you up. We're going to bring you up in fours. We're going to put you on the sofa. We're going to ask you questions, and you could see the blood drain out of them. It was like, oh, but they all did an amazing job and held their own and responded in such a really professional way. But it was a really great exercise. Maybe you want to do that in your business. Maybe you've got an organization there where you need two great hosts to come along and get you on the sofa and find out more about your business and what you do and tell the world.
What I liked about it, mate, it's that live and unscripted kind of process. It's a proper conversation where you don't know exactly where the conversation is going to go. Our guests sitting in the backstage right now are probably wonder where the conversations are going to go. But it was very, very authentic, very human. I liked it a lot, and the teams did brilliant. If you're watching any of the lovely Anglia Ruskin Big Pitch team, just say hi. Pop a message into the chat and say hello. Yeah. If you're not watching, then fair enough. You've
tell us on
catch up from the Chatbox experience.
You can tell us on catch up if you watch this at a later stage. We also did a really fun, interesting, different interview on Monday. Some of you have probably heard that Nick and I are involved with a project that's bounced off the back of Chatbox, and it's called Stream Aid Live, where we're interviewing great guests from all around the world with our other founders, Mr. Keith Smith and Making. There's 4 of us involved, and we're just kind of having fun, interviewing people about their business and how they can do small things to be more environmentally friendly, and also combat kind of their carbon footprint and stuff like that. But on Monday, Nick hosted, Nick played host, and I'll tell you why he played host in a minute. And we did the Hot Wings Challenge. Now, if you haven't seen it, you can go and look at it on all the channels on YouTube. It's also on our website. Go to chatboxproductions.com. And here's me in action. Just a quick screenshot here. I'm biting into my first chicken wing there. This is snapped off of Twitter. And here's another one. It was a little bit warm. The sauce was a little bit warm. And finally, Mr. Keith Smith about to dive into his vegetarian. I'm going to call it the equivalent of a chicken wing. Look more like a chicken nuggets equivalent. But Nick, it was great fun, wasn't it? We had some great conversation and some really intellectual conversation about the things that we could do as small business owners, how we can help tiny little things make big difference.
Absolutely, mate. It was a really good format to just have a conversation about some really important stuff, some crucial conversations about the environment. What are we going to do? What can us businesses do? Small steps for us that, if on scale, would make a big difference. And I'll tell you what, if you didn't see it, you go on YouTube and watch the catch up. There are so many great ideas. Work your way through the hot wings and the choking and the tears, but there are some amazing ideas that we can all do. Right, we can all do very, very simple, straightforward ideas that will make a difference. Brilliant, great fun to do.
Yeah, one of my big nuggets I took away, which I think is worth sharing. We all talk about not printing, and I never even thought about this, but not printing out our emails. We get these emails through, and as it was described to us on the bottom, lots of people have this little caption, don't print this email. It's not, friendly. Only print it if you really need to. And I print hardly anything, I'll be honest. There's odd bits and pieces. But what I found absolutely mind-boggling, if you keep your emails for over 12 months, that has a bigger impact on your carbon footprint, because the servers that are hosting all that information, i.e. storing it in the cloud, they're having to build more servers, have more servers to keep all that data. And that's burning electricity, which, as we know, Data centers have to be cooled. That's air conditioning. The impact is absolutely huge. And actually, the impact is bigger to store your email than it is to print it. Wow, I just didn't know.
Delete your old emails. That's me talking to me, really, because I've probably got emails that are more than a year old, and I need to just put them in some sort of storage that's not on some server somewhere. I think that's the answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Nick, it's that time in the morning. It's 10 past the hour. It's 10 past 8 on Thursday, the 19th of May. And I think it's time to bring on our first guest of the show, an expert in the metaverse. Not only, I'm sure he's got so much more he can share with us about business as well, but an expert in the metaverse, known as the Metaverse Man. And I'd like to welcome our first guest onto the show, who's going to kind of enlighten us, educate us, tell us more about the metaverse and all these various technical terms. We're exploring it a bit further. Please give a very warm welcome to our first guest of the Chatbox Business Breakfast Show this Thursday morning. Please welcome Mr. Dave McColl from RhinoXR Studios. Good morning, Dave, and welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Great to get you on. You know, we actually got to meet in person a few weeks ago. Even though we had this kind of all scheduled, we happened to bump into each other at an event, and it was great, wasn't it, Dave? 2 years of being in lockdown, not really seeing each other. Well, we didn't know how tall we were or where we were and stuff like that. And I think my opening line was to you, David, you're taller than I thought you was.
Yeah, I think you also said, and you've got legs as well, which did make me chuckle.
There we go. See, there we go. But welcome to the show. The Metaverse Man is kind of your nickname you go by. I suppose it would be prudent to start with asking you, well, we know who you are, you're Dave McColl, but who are you and what is it you actually do? And tell us a little bit more about RhinoXR Studios. Kind of wrap it up into a nutshell for us.
Yeah, sure. I basically work with Rhino as a consultant, so I'm helping them build up the profile through various media sources. My background is 30 years providing physical product to construction. The last 12 or so years was through insurance routes. And how I got into the metaverse was via crypto. I was helping people, I wouldn't use the word invest, but hold and store crypto in a safe manner. And like a lot of things that's happened to me, purely by accident, I ended up looking at this and getting more and more involved. So for the last 6 to 8 months, I've been heavily working with Rhino. So we help small, medium enterprises, big firms, whatever you like, get into the metaverse and help them understand how it will help them be more visible and become more profitable.
That sounds like an interesting way into the metaverse from something very physical, construction. Okay, you can't not be in construction and not look out the window and see some heavy machinery, into what I perceive is a space that's more virtual than real. Now, I've got so many questions for both of our lovely guests today. But Dave, let's start with some of the basics, okay? For those people that are sitting here a little bit perplexed like me, what when we talk about the metaverse, right? Sounds cool. What on earth are we talking about?
My view on it is basically next stage of how we are going to interact over and above the internet to what we're using at the moment. A lot of people have got this idea that it's all about Facebook. Facebook come out with a statement, I think last year in October, where they were going to rename and rebrand as Meta. That was the best bit of advertising that people in our business could ever have dreamt of. And the myth I must dispel right now is it's not all about Facebook. There are many metaverses that are looking at different ways of communicating and have got various different business use cases. The one I work with has got hundreds, and I could be here all day talking about that alone. So that hopefully gives you a little bit of a flavour of what's to come. We feel very strongly that even the way that we're meeting at the moment, two-dimensional and all the rest of it, I think that's sort of served its purpose, and we will be moving into different ways where we'll be communicating, where we can't do face-to-face, for example. So audiences that have got the capacity to travel somewhere, meet colleagues and what have you, if there was another pandemic that came in and stopped us from doing that, what we're putting together will actually help cover for that scenario. So we're kind of future-proofing businesses. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, there's lots of talk around the metaverse, and if you used to Google it, which I'm sure many people have, what is the metaverse? There's all sorts of various definitions, probably quite subjective in some people's minds what the metaverse is. But it's what's quite interesting. It's called the fictional universe.
Yeah.
It's a hypothetical, integration of the internet as a single universe, an immersive virtual world that is facilitated by the use of virtual reality, augmented reality headsets. So what we are talking about here, just to be very clear, is a place that doesn't exist. But what's really interesting is that you can go and buy and sell land, this virtual space, but no one owns it. I mean, it's kind of a bit weird, isn't it? That, this is fictional, no one owns it, but you can buy and sell this empty space that no one owns. And surely because it's virtual, you can just add another bit of space. So what are you buying? You might as well just create your own little area. I want another field. I'll just create one. It's a very interesting concept. But I suppose my question would be, and look, my background is 27 years of working typically in the technology industry and working in various types of businesses, my own, and helping others with their organizations as well. But let's be honest. Do you really think this is something that we should all take seriously? Or is this something that's going to build a lot of hype? It's a bit like cryptocurrency. It all goes up and everyone's talking about it. And then all of a sudden, I mean, people have, I was reading, people have, lost everything, including, they're talking about taking their own lives because of what the crypto market has done in the last week or two. Do you think that going back to the metaverse, it really has a place in our life existence?
It's a lengthy question, mate.
Yeah, it is.
That if you can, Dave.
Is it real? Do we need to be investing in it? Or is this just a lot of hot air?
Okay, let's talk about the ownership of land. Although it's virtual, like physical land, there's documentation to give you the provision of proof that you own it. I'm again talking about my platform as opposed to, or rather the Rhino platform as opposed to the others. A lot of it's represented by NFTs, which is a completely different subject matter altogether for another time. But that's generally how the ownership and proof of ownership works. How it's placed, I'm going to take us back to '95 when David Letterman had Bill Gates on his show and said to him, "What's this internet thing all about?" This is similar. This is the next stage of the internet. We've gone through stage 1 or web 1 and web 2. We're getting into web 3, and the metaverse is going to be part of that. And there will be a lot of companies, like there is in the crypto world, that will boom from nowhere and vanish and disappear because, as I said earlier, this is all about use cases. And if you've got adequate use cases that your audience that you're trying to capture are really into, you're likely to flourish out of that as opposed to not. I've seen some platforms, not just on the metaverse, but generally speaking, where I look at it and think, it's a good idea, but how do you put it into a working plan? How does it actually help businesses? And there's not that many out there, especially on metaverses, that have got that. It's deemed as a fun place to play, where you can, gamble if you like with your money. Our one is really about helping businesses get to that audience that they wouldn't normally have. In terms of physical numbers, we do have a defined plan of how many lots there are, what you can build on it. We've got green spaces, we've got parkways where one can walk, play areas for children. It is thought out just like a normal city.
But
so
why?
Can't
I just create another space? I just go, well, I'll create another one there. Why? What? Layman's question here.
Yeah.
Why would I buy something when I can create it myself for nothing? I don't know. And maybe there's not an answer to this. I'm just trying to understand. I'm just trying to put myself in the shoes of possibly our audience and what they might be thinking.
Yeah. Well, you're saying creating something for nothing. I mean, unfortunately, everything comes at a cost, isn't it? I'm not really that au fait with the technical aspects of it. I've just got a general understanding of what's inside and how it works. But you're quite correct. There is nothing stopping you from going and opening another metaverse. In fact, once we've built this city and it's complete, that's exactly what we're going to be doing. We will move on to another one. So we'll run several all at once. Again, I keep saying to everybody, think of the physical towns and cities that we live in. You know, you and I, we live in Braintree in Essex. At some stage, all this was a flat field, and now we've got a physical aspect. This is the virtual equivalent. And you mentioned that companies are rolling in. They are. There's performing arts. There's festivals that we're talking with. It's open to all genres and all types of businesses, and that's what the appeal is to the audience.
So I have a few questions.
Yeah.
I'm delighted that I don't have to give the keys to Web 3.0 to Mark Zuckerberg. My first impression was it was just a very clever rebranding from a company that people no longer trust. So that's cool, right? So some virtual universes being created, multiple different metaverses. Your one, for example, that you're involved in, will build up like a city, and certain user cases that it will really lend itself to, let's say, enhanced interactions.
Yeah.
I imagine enhanced interactions when people can't physically get together. Like so I can get together with people from across the globe. We can interact. You know, we can't meet in a room, but this will be good, right? What's because we're already doing that, but it will be better than this.
Yeah.
Is that okay? It's a bit like this, but much better.
Yeah, I mean, I've held and I've been involved in meetings where I've literally gone into an auditorium and sat next to I'll call them colleagues for the want of confusion. And it's felt like I've been there without actually being there. It's really given me that sort of, oh, this is really different to sitting on looking at square bits on a screen, which we do with Zoom and all the others. And don't get me wrong, they've served a really, really good purpose and still will. But I think at some point, bit of a controversial statement, but I think Zoom will eventually be like the fax machine is now. There will be people that will use it every now and then, but people would have moved on. Zoom probably will as well. They'll probably move into the metaverse because they'll realize how they can capture another audience. Google and so on are already looking at porting over there as well. So that's how I envision it. I mean, we were talking with a group a few months back. I don't think I actually was involved in this, but a colleague of mine was telling me where one of the people that we were interviewing was dressed up as a frog, and it was hilarious, and it opened up people's minds, creativities, and so forth. So it gives people a more relaxed way to get into business. And I've been selling for the best part of 35, 40 years now. And one of the scariest things that I ever had was opening that very first door and going in to see someone that I didn't know from Adam. But with this, it's different. It gives you a more relaxed feel. So certainly for the younger generation, I think it's going to help them learn skill sets before they go out into the actual field. But you're quite right, and I must emphasize this. It's not designed to replace driving out, seeing someone face to face. You can never replicate that at the moment. But this is the next best thing when you can't do that. So that's the whole design of this business model.
Yeah, no, great. I've got a couple of kind of technical questions here, nothing too technical, but I just know that some of our audience are going to think, okay, we're talking about the metaverse. We've covered a lot of that. VR, AR, MR, XR. You know, if you're in it, you know what they all stand for. But let's start with obviously the basic, virtual reality. That's kind of the one that most people have probably know of and possibly experienced as well, where, like Nick, pop a headset on and you can go off and zoom down to street level on Google Earth and stuff like that. So that's probably the most common at this stage. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Probably along with augmented reality being AR. They're probably the two that most people know of and heard of. I then come across MR, which is their mixed reality, which is bringing together kind of those two elements combined. And then we've got this XR, which is kind of the incumbent, the umbrella, I think is the right words, where it kind of wraps everything together. So is this a bit like, I use this analogy quite a lot, a bit like the Betamax versus VHS war? You know, there's all these different platforms, all these different universes, and one of them is going to win at some point. Might not be the better, because we all knew Betamax was far superior, but VHS won the war. Do you see that happening here as well?
I'll relate it to search engines. You know, most of us use Google. We can use Brave. We can use other search engine types. There's plenty out there. But yes, technically, it could be viewed as that. The XR, basically, that terminology, XR, has been around since the 60s. So none of this is brand new, but it's just been re-brought to the audience so one can go, well, what is XR? You know, we know what VR is. Actually going and watching a film, that's virtual reality. We're not involved in the film. It's virtual to us and so forth. But moving on to what XR is, it's extended reality. So it's all those things that you've mentioned. And the term I use when I'm trying to sort of explain this to someone, mixed with a bit of gaming steroids on top. So it almost looks cinematic. And that's what our platform is like. So I could have my avatar walking down the street, and let's imagine it's got, I don't know, my hair's 2 foot long, and there's a slight breeze. You'd see my hair move, you'd see my eyes blink and things like that. We've chosen to go that way as opposed to full-blown cinematic because we didn't want it to be a carbon copy of what a film environment is like. So there's a lot of things to sort of look at and consider, and I think that's going to drive the success of the particular platform and program that I'm involved in. Others will have a purpose and already have. And I think there's going to be a case where there'll be several that will carry on and survive, and a few will sort of finish as quick as they started. It's just the way that how you put it towards your audience, you know.
This leads me on to another issue, right? So that analogy of the development of the web being similar to VHS, DVD, streaming platforms. I used to be in the broadcast industry, so I kind of get that battle between VHS and Betamax. And VHS won that war based on they had more titles in the old video stores. So it was a real estate thing. Betamax was a better video format, but VHS, if you walked into the video store, there was more options with VHS, which makes me wonder, right, if I've got some different metaverses to choose from, will the ones that survive be the ones with the deepest pockets, like the Facebook stroke meta environments? Will they win the VHS war because they're more prevalent? And you know they've got control maybe of headsets. I don't know. When are we going to see this stuff, Dave? When are we likely to be able to experience it? Because the gamers have been experiencing this kind of thing for a number of years, haven't they? Avatars, you know, immersive environments, VR chat. They've been doing it for a while. When are we going to see it?
Well, hopefully by the end of this year with our platform. Well, I've got some tours that I'll be doing within a week or two. I'll post links on LinkedIn and places like that for people to join. But yes, it's to answer your question about whether it's going to be about deep pockets or not, I'm going to bring it right back again. It's all about use cases. There'll be people that will join others and go, this isn't for me, sell up and go. That's where they will start to trip towards failing unless they change their working model. But also, if it's not engaging enough, if it doesn't provide what it says on the tin, if it's not easy to use, if it doesn't rely on headsets, which ours doesn't, that's going to make the case stronger for the client to engage and start to endorse and use it and so forth. Plus, we also give value for money. And there's a lot of, to give you a for instance, I can sell virtual land with a building on it from about $3,700 upwards. Now, two of the bigger platforms that have been going for a little while now, their start just for the plot of land, which by the way is a tenth of the size of the area that we provide, at about 11 grand US dollars. So there's value already, and we basically can work with clients to give the bespoke factor. You know,
this is mind-boggling. You're buying pixels. That is what you're buying. You're buying absolutely dilly squat. It's just what, and we don't have time to go into this, but it's what NFTs are. You're buying absolutely nothing. You don't ever own anything, and this is why I'm worried that this is a bubble that's going to burst. Where does this money go? You say to the organizations that are building and maintaining and running the platforms and the servers and da-da-da. But it's just a lot of hot air. Well, pixels. As I say, it's a conversation for another day because we are very close to time, Dave. And I know I've got 1,000,001 questions we keep asking and going on about. So I think we might have to have a Metaverse 2.0 show at some point.
I'd love to be involved.
where we kind of delve in a bit deeper. But 2 questions from me, and then I'll see if Nick's got one final one to wrap up on. Firstly, how can people get in touch with you? I can help out a little bit here because I've already kind of got this ready. So hopefully this gives obviously a bit more about RhinoXR Studios. But if people want to get in touch with you directly, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Probably my email address. It's dave@astuteassets.co.uk. I can be found on LinkedIn as well. Please join me, link up with me. That'd be great too. I more or less live on that platform as opposed to the others, but I've got a big social coverage. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, of course, under the Astute Assets brand, which is the company that I run. But the best way is probably the email address.
And I'm sure they can find you delving around the metaverse at some point with your for sale signs in a plot of land next to a building. And one question we're asking all our guests that come onto the show: top business tip, not necessarily related to the metaverse, could be anything and anything that you've learned over your time of being involved in businesses, running businesses. What would be your tip that you'd like to include in our book that we will be, well, maybe putting in the metaverse in the future?
Keep an open mind.
Open mind, yes. I suppose for this we need an open mind to see what's coming. Nick, over to you. Do you have a final question to kind of say goodbye to Dave on?
I think it's been great answering some of the questions that cynical Nick kind of they spring to mind. Keep an open mind. That resonates. Absolutely right. There's so many tech developments that the more open-minded we are, the more likely we are to embrace them. My biggest reservation, I think, as tech develops, is that the big organizations tend to buy the best bits. If they see something they like, they'll buy it. Any ideas, Dave, how you keep the likes of Facebook at arm's length when Mark Zuckerberg looks and says, Dave's got some cool stuff, I'll have some of that?
To quote someone I met recently, and this is his words, not mine, he said that Facebook tend to come out with an idea, other people come on and actually make that idea look a lot better. I've got no concerns about the likes of Facebook, Google coming out with bits and pieces, because the way that I see the business going, looking at these financial experts that have looked at Metaverse, and I've got a graph somewhere from PwC, the growth is extraordinary. We could be talking $2 trillion by 2030 in terms of the Metaverse only. So I think there's enough of that to go around for everyone.
Cool.
Well, there we go. Thank you very much, Dave McColl, joining us in the virtual studio, not quite the Metaverse studio yet. We look forward to catching up with you when we are in the Metaverse. That's our aim for Nick and I. And God knows who will join us or what buildings we're going to buy. We're going to buy a nice big studio, Nick. That's what we're going to do. Once again, David, thank you very much for joining us. We'll be straight back after this.
Thanks for having me.
That's our metaverse, Nick. It's called the universe. It's real. It's tangible. See it through a telescope.
Fortunately, we've got another guest who hopefully will provide some even more clarity around this. But I still don't quite get it. I kind of get the concept, but I guess I don't really quite understand NFTs either. And I don't fully understand the blockchain technology. I kind of see cryptos, which kind of the headline part of it. There's so much that maybe I'm too old maybe I'm just maybe my kids will totally get it much better than I am. But fortunately, our next guest is younger than me, and will hopefully shine some light and show us the way of why we should be thinking about investing in and getting more knowledgeable about all things metaverse. So, ladies and gents, without further ado, let's get another expert on the show. Please welcome the magical Mr. Vincent McAtamney.
Good morning. Good morning.
Hello there. I must say,
Vincent from VINTEC Immersive Technology. Now, lots of questions to ask you, but we'll give you an opportunity to say who you are and what you do. And please also at some point let us know the difference between immersive technology and the metaverse.
of course.
It sounds like a blend, but who are you, Vincent? Share your magic with us.
Nick, first of all, thank you for commenting on my age. I think I'm probably older than I look, but thanks anyway. I'll take it. And actually, you did touch on a point. There is a bit of an age thing with the metaverse, so I'll talk about that in a moment as well. But just a very kind of brief surmise of my background. Like yourselves and like our first guest, Dave, who I really enjoyed hearing from, I come from very much a working background, working predominantly in the audiovisual industry. And it was actually on board a super yacht. Yes, a super yacht where I was doing all the AV, the IT and the comms, that I first saw augmented reality being used in a real world scenario. The chief engineer was holding up an iPad and different pieces of equipment were pinging off information for different global settings. And that really struck a chord with me as a musician as well, struck a chord with me. And I just remember holding on to that thought. And it was a year or so later, circumstances changed. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this. So I went to work for a London agency, hated it, but cut my teeth there, learned what I needed to do, and then formed VINTEC with the idea of enabling us, humankind, to better interact with, see, interact and engage with our favourite products, our favourite brands. So very much experiential marketing, which is another topic we can talk about. That was day one of VINTEC. What I forgot to do in my business plan was write the words COVID, pandemic, global meltdown. So as you can imagine, we went from 0 to 200 miles an hour and then kind of back down to 0 again when everything stopped and we work in the live events industry. But what that actually has done is allowed us to mature on the real use case scenario of this, which is something David spoke about, actually doing this because it makes a difference to people's lives and businesses. So to touch on that in the metaverse, if you imagine that within a year, 18 months or so, metaverse spaces that are being developed now, we're developing some, David's developing others, using platforms like Facebook Horizons and others, Meta Horizons and others, as well as bespoke platforms. A major part of the world's population are going to be using these. Now, a major part is going to run into billions. So imagine billions and billions of people socializing, working, learning, playing, challenging themselves, all sorts of things within these spaces. That's a pretty big audience, and if you can just tap into a small percentage of that, I think you'd agree that as business users, most of your audience are in business, would want a piece of that action. So really anyone that's looking at their business plan, maybe not in the short-term future, the right here, right now, how you're going to get the money in the door next week, but certainly for the next 5 and 10 years beyond, if they're going to be an international and a global company and you want to deal with the world, this is the way to do it.
Interesting. Yeah, no, interesting. Obviously hearing from Dave earlier, and obviously this subject to me is quite subjective and opinionated, and there's different metaverses, and and I kind of threw out some questions to Dave purposely to kind of get the thoughts flowing, what others are thinking. Do you agree, disagree, with some of the comments that David made there? Is there, different perspectives on this, where things could go in the future? I mean, you're talking, billions, global population, whatever it is, 7.7 billion these days. You're talking billions. I think Facebook say we've got a market cap of 2.7 billion, users. Twitter say they've got something else. Elon Musk disagrees with that figure, but that's a different story. Do you really think it's going to scale to that level? I mean, I agree there's obviously opportunity, but it's a big change, isn't it? It's a really big development.
I do, and I don't believe that this metaverse thing is something we can stop now. I really don't. And I'm speaking about human. I'm not speaking as an owner of a tech company. I'm speaking as a father, a husband, a man, a human being. I think this is where we're going as as a culture. But I think where we failed on the internet is where we can put things right on the metaverse. So for instance, on the internet, we talk about dwell time and perhaps loss of time. We can all waste time on the internet, browsing, surfing, and not really getting anywhere. Whereas the metaverse is actually far more about experiences. And of course, that's how we learn. Anyone will tell you if they've done any classroom-based training that was really boring, they probably didn't learn anything. If they had someone, teacher or a coach, that showed them something and made them laugh or made them go, wow, they'll remember that experience. And that's really where the metaverse is. It touches into human learning on a far deeper intellectual scale and personal scale as well.
So that sounds amazing, right? That you could open up spaces, engage with bigger audiences in a way that make people go wow. Now, if you and I were in let's say an auditorium, okay, to get our audience to go wow, I'm really learning this stuff, you and I would have to be amazing, right?
Yeah, we are. Hey.
Well, of course, no problem whatsoever, right? Anyone wants us in the auditorium, give us a call, right? We'll be there.
Dave's not so bad as well. Dave is okay. He can come.
But in the metaverse, right, that wow factor based around the technology, or is it based around that you and I don't know, whatever we're doing in that space?
A bit of both. I know it's a bit of a politician's answer, but let me explain. In the real world, there are limitations. So, I mean, let's take something like an exhibition space. If you or I rock up a small Essex business fair, we've probably paid hundreds of pounds for it, and we're probably going to get a few pop-up posters, and we're going to make some impact. If you're BMW or Rolls-Royce and you're exhibiting at a major global show, you're going to spend hundreds of thousands and knock people dead. But there are still limitations. You can't have a floating ceiling on nothing because there's something in this world called gravity and things like this that limit any budget. With the metaverse, there really are no limits. And I'm finding that, coming from an experiential marketing background, we're always asking the questions as to what, why are you doing this? Who are you trying to sell to, and for what? And what are you trying to sell, and why? To get that wow factor, you can do things in metaverse spaces that just aren't possible to do in the real world. I mean, the classic is, and it's been done to death, so it's not really that cool now, but if you want to have a business meeting on the Mars surface, you can. Yeah, it's memorable. It's a bit daft now because we've all done it to death, but you can. So it doesn't have to be that classic kind of London boardroom. You can interact with anything, anywhere. You can, within virtual reality especially, you can put any person anywhere and make them do anything.
Yeah, that's interesting. So there we go, Nick. We could have a meeting on the moon and be the first people to actually go to the moon. For those that remember a previous episode, we were talking about, have we ever walked on the moon? Anyway, let's not diverse. Let's stick to the metaverse. Let's stick to the metaverse, which is all fictional as well, just like the trip to the moon, and come back to reality. You're an award-winning business, Vincent. That's how we come across you, actually. We sat on the same table. We shared some great conversation, and yourself and on the evening, Chatbox picked up an award as well. That was October last year when we kind of met you face to face, and you've been on the show. So you're a friend of the show. You've been on a previous show talking about your award. How, for the business, has things transitioned in that kind of, let's call it like the last 6-7 months or so? What's changed? Has there been any big developments, not just in the business, but in that metaverse world?
For sure. And I absolutely endorse what Dave said earlier about Zuckerberg. Can't stand the guy personally, but having said that,
Nick says that. I don't particularly, but yeah,
his endorsement of the metaverse and rebranding to Meta was the biggest advertisement that our industry could have had, and probably wrote our business plan for the next 10 years. In all honesty, like many, we come at it from a slightly different perspective to your previous guests, in the sense that we're content creators. So we'll take platforms and modules, some of them off the shelf, some created depending on what the client's budget is, and build an experience place. So your virtual office that you build, that you want, for instance, how do you want it to look? How do you want it to feel? What parts are going to be interactive? We'll design all of that, but we might do that depending on what your budget is within an already existing platform or a completely new bespoke platform. When you were speaking earlier about creating a new piece of space, yes, you can do that, but you do know development costs, very, very high. It takes a long time, and to do these things properly, you look at what most game engine developers they live like rock stars. You know, it's not cheap to do yourself. So that's really where the business model comes in. What's changed for us is probably more, we've moved into more of a consultative model. Since October, we picked up our award for some work we did with Nissan, and I can tell you about that another time. But that was really the forerunner to what would become the metaverse. And now people are just coming to us saying, we know we need this, we know we can't ignore this, but what, where, how, where do we even begin? And what we're able to do is sort of guide them through, look at pinch points within their business, just like any other coach would do. What might be better, what might not work, why it might work, why it might not work, what their competitors are doing and why they're doing it. And if they wish, we can then develop sites and spaces beyond that.
So it sounds like there's an amazing opportunity out there. Certainly for a business that's focused on, okay, I want a big audience, and I want a big audience to have a great experience at some point, either now or some point in the future. Are we there yet, Vincent? If Dave and I said, yeah, we want to run a Chatbox chat show in the metaverse, how long do you reckon it would be before our global audience could experience that?
So that really depends. First of all, to really get the full use of the metaverse, yes, you can use laptop screens, etc. And I know Dave mentioned earlier a non-headset version of their platform. Absolutely, that's how you're going to reach the masses at the moment, using good old mobile phones and the like as well. But the real experience comes with wearables. And of course, if any of you have seen, I'm not in my home office, I'm at the work office today, so I haven't got my headset here. But if any of you have seen the Meta headsets, formerly Oculus, you'll know they're very cool, they're amazing, but they're not the sort of thing you just want to whip out in the middle of the street. They're still quite a significant piece of hardware. But of course, Apple, Google, Microsoft, all of the major companies out there are already at the final stages of development on significant wearables that look more like a pair of reading glasses. I haven't got any reading glasses with me, but I've got a pair of sunglasses, so there you go. When we can wear something like that and have both a virtual or a mixed reality experience, I want to quantify those as well, anywhere in real, then really the world becomes a metaverse. Everywhere becomes an advertising billboard or a learning point or a touch point.
And I think that's the key here. We're talking about, and you mentioned this earlier on, we're talking about the opportunity to educate, to experience. So I just take the pandemic, for the last 2 years where I, work with my own businesses and I work with others such as universities and educational establishments. They went onto online learning platforms, which at first was kind of a bit different, it's a little bit, but everyone got bored of that within like a week. And if you ever do kind of anything within some educational establishment, you don't see anybody. It's just you on camera, just you, and everybody else is there with just an image, because it's not really that immersive. It's not really that fun. And yes, it probably is educational if someone's tuned in and listening and watching. But I suppose this virtual reality world, this metaverse, would make it much more interesting because people could get up, move around, go and sit next to their favorite person, so to speak, tap them on the shoulder. It's much more immersive from that perspective. Question though, and I picked this out partly from your website, The Matrix. I'm a sci-fi fan. I love it. Do you ever think it's, and again, I'm thinking, so this is your thought of what the future looks like. Do you think that's what we will see? Because I have a problem with the metaverse. It's very still cartoony. It's not real. We know it's not real, or when we put that headset on, but do you think it should be more cinematic? Do you think it should be more like going to a movie and actually seeing real people? Is the technology and the power there to create that type of world available at the moment anyway? But what do you think it looks like in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, 50 years' time?
I think it will move towards more photoreal, if you like. Yes, I mean, Unreal Engine, for instance, is the platform we tend to develop on, and it's used by Hollywood films, so it looks real. It really does. But of course, you need big processing power and big equipment to run it. So that's why a lot of the platforms have been perhaps lower poly count and more animated in their field. But that also touches on something I said earlier about there is this phrase IRL, in real life. Remember when I first started hearing that, when we stopped having Zoom meetings, we had IRL meetings in real life. So there's a sort of the in real life, and then there's the metaverse in the virtual world. Wouldn't it be better to keep the two of them being quite different, so that one has a different experience in either? As I say, a meeting on Mars in the metaverse and a meeting in a boring London showroom in real life, potentially. So I think it's quite good that there is a distinction between the two at the moment.
I think that's the right attitude to have. I'm not sure the tech giants will want people to leave the metaverse and be in the real world. I've watched Ready Player One, and the virtual world looks more fun than the real world. As a family man, Vincent, when you're looking to the future, saying, "Well, this is going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing for education and businesses." Do you consider what let's say the negative implications are? Right? If you're a family man, kids they lock themselves in their bedrooms and they're gaming all day. And some of that's really beneficial. They're communicating with their mates and they're learning some stuff along the way. But there is another side. Well, come on, get out into nature. Why don't you? No, because immersive gaming is better in theory, right? No, get out into nature, kick a football around or whatever. Do you wonder, is the future a space where we get stuck in the virtual multicolored, oh my God, that's amazing world? Or is there still room for in real life?
Nick, I'm so glad you asked me that, because it is a subject personal to my heart. Actually, I have a 7-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old grandson, so I think that was a part of the life plan. So I very much care about their future and where things are going. I also live on a farm, and we tend to really enjoy unplugging from everything and going for a walk in the wellies. So I do love life, and I also think it'd be quite sad if in 200 years' time there's another bloke called Vince who opens up a tech experience company where they take people to a real duck pond and they really feel we're real ducks. That would be so sad. I don't want that to happen. So I think that without going all Spider-Man on you, that with the responsibility that tech companies and developers have, there is a huge amount of social responsibility with that as well. With great power comes great responsibility. I couldn't resist it, sorry. That is so true. However, I also do think that this is where I'm taking a leap of faith on humanity, really. I think we do know what's right and what's wrong. And I do think that by keeping the metaverse as an experience-based place that's different to the real world, one can enjoy both and should enjoy both. And I also love meeting people in real life. My wife laughs when we go supermarket shopping because I refuse to go to the auto checkouts, even though I own a tech company, because I enjoy mixing with real people. And I think as long as we do not lose those social skills, and actually the metaverse potentially could enhance our social skills. I get frustrated by kids messaging each other when they're in the same room, whereas in the metaverse, at least they'll be talking and interacting and perhaps understanding body language. I hope it doesn't give us a bleak dystopian future, and I don't think it has to.
Yeah, I think we all prefer the manual checkout. Someone packs your bag for you, and you can have a good conversation as long as they're obviously not having a bad day, because we've all pretty experienced the checkout individuals that can be a little bit grumpy on occasions, but of course there's lots of happy-go-lucky ones out there as well, which can actually make your day and you make theirs. So the future is unknown. As you say, with power comes responsibility. That comes down to the likes of the tech companies, the big ones, what we know of, and probably other smaller organizations as well. Very interesting you mentioned about Apple. I'm a big Apple fan. Have been, not just about their products. I think their products are great, but the way they do innovate, they do market. Others will possibly disagree, of course. And you mentioned about the Apple glasses that have been spoken about for so long. There was a story of the Google Glass which come out and failed dramatically. They sold God knows how many, but it didn't really work. Do you reckon the next phase of this is going to work? To get as you said, having an Oculus headset, you can't just pull it out your pocket. It comes with equipment and cables and all sorts. Just popping a pair of glasses like you did with your sunglasses, that's got to be the way forward, surely.
I absolutely agree. And just to back up what you said about Apple, I've always thought, I heard a lovely phrase, they're the last ones to arrive at the party, but they bring the best beer. And I think that's probably a good summary. When they bring out a headset or a pair of glasses, that will change the world. And there's rumours about 2023. Might be a bit soon, but maybe not. Who knows? Certainly soon. We're not talking 10 years. We're not even talking 5 years. We're talking within 18 months or so, I believe. There was something else I was going to add to that. Forgot my train of thought now, guys. Sorry, but there was something. Oh yeah, so it's quite relevant. I think that what we get to do with the metaverse is to bring in. I'm not going to go all political on you, but where Google Glass failed wasn't necessarily the hardware. I mean, yes, it was in its infancy. Things like the Magic Leap glasses and the early Microsoft HoloLens are all really, really cool. Yeah, they're limited, but they're really, really cool. But as soon as you put a pair of glasses on and you walk down the street and they've got a camera in them and you walk past a school or you walk into a public building or a police station or a hospital, you know where I'm going with this. You just can't do that. You just can't film in those sort of places. You just can't scan all those areas. In other words, this needs government legislation, and it doesn't just need government legislation from one country. It needs to be global. Everyone needs agreement. The internet was never really, it's often called the Wild West. It was never really managed from the beginning. That opens up the whole freedom of speech thing, which is another topic for another day, but Elon Musk is making lots of noises in that regard. Right or wrong, it's an interesting conversation. And I think that where the metaverse will really win or lose will be if things are legislated correctly from the beginning, and we therefore can enjoy the benefits of the metaverse, but without the infringements on people's personal space and rights.
I think therein is a real issue we've got, because if we don't have to look far to see that legislation is playing catch up to the big tech companies. You put Mark Zuckerberg in a room with a load of politicians and he runs rings around them, makes them look foolish because they don't understand the tech. And if we're expecting the big tech companies to, let's say, become trustworthy, they're starting way back, right? I don't know how many big tech companies we actually trust. I know we don't really vote with our feet as much as perhaps we should, but I think trust and the motivations, I suppose, of, let's say, the organizations involved, I'd like to think there needs to be a massive amount of transparency there. Otherwise, we're going to end up in a 10 years time, someone else doing a whistleblowing situation around some of this new technology, and us parents will be petrified. We won't let our kids anywhere near it.
Yeah, absolutely. Vincent, we're coming to the end of the show. We try to wrap up on the hour if we can, and wave goodbye to all our listeners and viewers. But if people want to find out more about VINTEC, what you do, how you do it, I know you've got a website because I was on there earlier and I can help out with that by popping that up on the screen. But what's the best way for people to get in touch with you? Is it via the website? Is there other alternatives?
The website's good. LinkedIn is great. I really use LinkedIn like most of us daily. So LinkedIn is great. And there aren't too many Vincent McAtamneys on LinkedIn either, or in fact on any social media. info@vintec.online is the shortened email address. Happy to take that. And honestly, I welcome conversation from anyone. It's a topic I love speaking about and very passionate about. So yeah, get in touch.
Brilliant. And then final question, as we ask all our guests on the show, and then you've done us a top business tip in the past. I think we were gathering and then Nick going back to, well, we were. Yes, we were. Let's see if we can grab another great top tip out. You can get mentioned twice in our book that's coming soon.
Okay.
What would be your top business tip to everybody here listening?
I think the last time I may have said start early in the day, so I'll skip past that one now. How about from time to time, perhaps every week, do something that scares you, do something that puts you on the edge.
Yes. Yeah, I like that. And that's going to be different for us all, depending on what scares us. Eating hot wings scared Nick on Monday. I forgot to say why he hosted the show and not munched on the chicken wings. But unfortunately, he's next in the hot seat for the next version. Vincent, it's been great having you back on here this morning, telling us a little bit more about what you do, how you do it, about your perceived ideas for the future of the metaverse. We'll get you back. We'll get you back in 6 months, 12 months time, and find out if some of your thoughts and future kind of gleaming knowledge is actually come to reality. So thanks a lot for joining us this morning. Everybody give Vincent a great, virtual round of applause. Thank you, Vincent. There we go, Nick. Approaching the end of the show. 2 great guests, learned lots of takeaways. I've coined a couple of phrases, by the way. IRL, in real life. Love that one, Vincent. I'm going to use that because I always say we're back in the room or face to face in real life. Love it.
It needs shortening. IRL. I didn't know that. For some reason that passed me by. But big tech, right? Tech is helping us out. It's progressing all the time. Thank you very much, James. It was indeed thought-provoking. Where is technology taking us? Okay, so technology has taken us this far, my friend. It's got us to this point, to the point where you can even go on holiday, right, and still watch the show. Hello, Mum, in sunny Mallorca.
Hello, Mum.
Thank you for tuning in, as always. Without the tech, right, we wouldn't get that far. It's just, what do the next steps? And there's definitely going to be next steps. What do they look like? And who's going to be leading the charge?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So there we go. It's dead on the hour, 9 o'clock on Thursday, the 19th of May. What a great show, all about the metaverse. If you're just joining us now, you're going to have to hit that rewind button because you can watch all the shows, not just this one, but all our previous shows by going to the website, chatboxproductions.com. If you want to join us on the show, go there, click the sign up now button. Tell us who you are, what you do, why you do it. And you never know, we might get you on here to talk about your area of expertise and how you can educate and inform our audience. Nick, as always, it's been lovely having you here with me, alongside me, supporting me supporting you, having fun, smiling and learning. But that's it for this week. That's all we've got time for. So, well, I'm going to go off to the metaverse, go and get myself some breakfast, I think.
Have fun, my friend. Have virtual fun. And see you next week, ladies and gents.
See you next week. Bye-bye.